And away we go. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you happen to be in the world today. Welcome, one and all, to Coffee Talk. It is time once again for Coffee Talk Live, where we will be having some discussion about what is going on in the world today. We'll take a look at some clips from the news, share a little bit of dialogue with those of you who are able to join us for the live portion. If you happen to be listening somewhere else and you wanted to join the live portion, you can find us Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube, on Coffee Talk and Prepper University. That's at Coffee Talk Live and at Prepper University, as well as X at Coffee Talk Chat and fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta. And naturally, I do read through as many of the comments as is plausible. For the benefit of those of you who are listening and not able to see, and I'll say hello to some of those people, the ones that chose to chime in so far. I see Dragon is with us today, as well as Spectre, Country Living, and Boogers. Says Merry Christmas. A couple of people say Merry Christmas. Yes, indeed. That is tomorrow, actually, which I will not be going on tomorrow. Much too much to do tomorrow, so I will not be doing a podcast tomorrow. Hey, who was here for the trolls yesterday? Did you have fun with the trolls? Did you have fun with the trolls? I chose to ignore it. I chose to ignore it when I saw the direction that it was going in, because they had asked a couple of questions, but I knew what was going on. They wanted to pretend like they were all offended that, oh God, I was expecting nonpartisan conversation, and you could tell from the thumbnail even that it was at least going to be moderately conservative, whatever it was that we talked about. And you knew that coming in. You came in on purpose to try to stir things up, seeing that. And I just ignored it. But there was some people in the comment section that chose to kick some sand in their face. Helter's joined us. I'm glad you could make it today as we continue on here. We'll take a look at some things from the news. There was a news piece that I wanted to get to yesterday that I had missed, but I've got it lined up here today. And that's the woman in the New York subway that was overlooked. It was overlooked, and it's already kind of disappearing in the news media. The one of the questions that they had asked about Donald Trump was if that aren't his tariffs going to cause problems and things like that. And it's like, well, history speaks for itself. He already did the tariffs before, and things were fine. And then they brought up that he had to bail out farmers, and it's like, yeah, every president's had to bail out farmers every year, going all the way back to 1949. Look it up. So the fact that he had to do it again on his watch is no different than Biden doing it, Obama doing it, Bush, Clinton, President Carter, and so on. John has joined us. He says cat power. Indeed. No cats in the room, though. They're not in here. They're sleeping here, there, and everywhere. Hither and thither do they sleep about the house, making themselves nice and comfortable. As it's a cold day, but it's warm in here. As we are going to jump to a New York Post article here. And this is one I wanted to talk about yesterday. It's already completely faded out of the news, but it's important. Sleeping subway rider burned alive on the F train after crazed attacker tosses a lit match on her. Have you seen this? I don't know if they've got the video footage of it, because there is actual video of it, because people sure did get their cell phones out. A sleeping subway rider burned to death on the F train in Coney Island Sunday morning after a madman threw a lit match onto her, causing her to burst into flames. New York Police Department officers responded to reports of fire before 7:30 a.m. on the Coney Island Stillwell Avenue subway station and found the woman engulfed in fire while sitting on an idling F train. She was found with liquor bottles surrounding her, though it was not immediately clear if they played any part in the fire. I'm sure they did. Investigators believe the woman was sleeping when a man sitting across from her got up, walked by her, and threw a match on her, engulfing her in fire. The man, believed to be in his late 20s, fled the station. Police extinguished the fire, and EMS declared the woman dead at the scene. Service on the F train remained suspended into Sunday afternoon as police investigators continued combing through the crime scene. Shocked commuters watched in horror as the woman's body was carted out of the station in a black bag after 1 p.m. An MTA worker told the Post it looked like the woman's clothes were burnt off completely. Police were already processing the scene, and the woman's body had been extinguished when the man saw the grim sight, which clearly jolted him. Commuters continuously paused in their tracks while transferring trains to take in the horrific scene. Well, you know how everybody rubbernecks an accident, so that doesn't surprise me at all. Sunday morning's horrifying attack comes as Governor Kathy Hochul deployed an additional 250 National Guard troops in New York City subways for the holiday season and beyond, swelling the New York Army's total guards $100 million subway deployment to 1,000 troops. Some 8 million visitors were expected to travel to the Big Apple over the holiday. So there's 1,000 National Guard plus the regular New York police plus the MTA police, and this still happens. Still happens. Hochul insisted her controversial first deployment of National Guard troops into the subways in March had led to a dramatic drop in transit crime, noting subway crime has dipped 10%, if that's true. Despite the governor's efforts, murders on New York subways were up 60% this year, according to the data that was collected in September. So much for the crimes going down 10%, if murders up 60%, with the Army of National Guard and other police already on the subway. What do you think of that? Tuck is here. And Country Living says, sounds like a lot of people just walked by her and didn't do anything while she was on fire. Yes, and from some of the other clips that I had seen in photos, which I can't show on this because of ScrewTube, she was alive while she was burning. And the person who did it was there, as well as law enforcement. Also, I've read other reports that the person who did it was a migrant. I don't know if that's true or not, but I've read a report somewhere that suggested that this person was an illegal alien who set her on fire in the first place. But yeah, she was alive while she was on fire. Law enforcement was there. It wasn't managed. It wasn't managed. Tuck says, I told my wife we can't even afford to take a half-day fishing trip to Lake Okeechobee, next county north, yet this psycho managed to get here from Guatemala twice. Yeah. So there's 1,000 National Guard, and I don't know how many transit cops and New York City police officers, and there's state troopers in there too, I believe, right? Patrolling the subways, and this stuff still happens. And according to data from the New York Police Department, murders on the subways are up 60% this year already. That doesn't, but then she claims there's a 10% drop in crime. What kind of crime are you talking about? People jumping the turnstiles? I wouldn't jump the turnstiles with 30 National Guard standing there either. But obviously, people are still getting killed on these trains. Country says nobody cares anymore. Wasn't Hochul one of the defund the police pushers too? I think you're right. Monkey says the illegal was deported and came back. He's Guatemalan. So that is true. And Tuck says, I'm hearing he's been deported once already. All this does is, not trying to include a pun here, but it fuels the fire, as it were, to push the whole agenda that Trump has to deport these people in the first place and to get them the hell out of the country. Yeah, I had read somewhere that he was an illegal alien, and I guess that's confirmed now. But yeah, the extra guard on the train, She claims it's down 10%, but then the New York police data says murders are up 60% on the subway. So are murders up and the other crimes are down, or how does that work? How do they get, where do they get those numbers? And again, he stood there, she burned, she was still alive, and there's, in the shots that I saw, you could see a police officer there. You could see a police officer there. Wasn't there nothing that could be done? I mean, I have to imagine somewhere on that train there must be a fire extinguisher in the cab, perhaps, if there was any train personnel available. I mean, granted, you don't want to touch a person who's burning. You couldn't get that close anyways. This is really unfortunate. This is really unfortunate. And it paints her in a bad light. It paints New York in a bad light, and it shines an additional light on the entire migrant industrial complex that we're being crushed under in the first place. Crushed under in the first place. Oh, and I did go to the P.O. box today, and I had some cards and letters from some of the viewers. Juan and Phil sent me some mail. I appreciate that. Thank you. To the P.O. box again. Tuck says, I imagine being in New York City, there is a chronic shortage of fire extinguishers, perhaps. But there, you would think at least one to be in the crew cab. But if it was an idle train, they may not have had access to it. So I don't know that he could have done anything, because, people like to say that. But when you got a fire blazing, this woman, I'm assuming alcohol might have been poured on her. There were empty liquor bottles. Her clothes are engulfed. That kind of heat, it's hard to get close to. So what do you do? What do you do? The average person wouldn't know what to do. Even somebody who might have been partially trained at some point for something like that, like a police officer, you would think they would have some kind of fire training, perhaps, or how to deal with a fire. What do you do? What do you do? It's not so simple. It's not so simple. That heat will repel you. That heat will repel you. Another Post article coming up here, and this is today. This is a big one today. More sabotage. Although this one's not really going to work out very well for the Biden administration. They've been doing a lot to sabotage the incoming administration. Again, New York Post article, Biden vetoes the bill to add 66 federal judges, likely fearing Trump appointments. So President Biden made good on his threat and vetoed a bipartisan bill Monday to add 66 new judges to federal courts that were seen as understaffed. And that doesn't hiring or replacing judges or anything like that. They're creating six because the courts are so badly backlogged. That's what this is. It's 66 new jobs. But he's scared that Trump is going to be able to appoint some of these judges, so he vetoed it to be a smug asshole, basically, which is what he looks like in this photograph. Like, hi, I'm a smug prick, and I just did more sabotage. That's exactly what that is. But all this is going to do is delay the process, and it'll get pushed through later after Trump's already in office, and then he'll appoint them anyways. So what the hell difference does it make? Biden claimed the bill was, quote, too hurried in garnering congressional approval. That doesn't bother you when it's something you want, though, huh? But some observers said he was likely predominantly concerned about the President-elect Donald Trump might be able to make the posts in office. The Judges Act would have gradually increased the number of federal judgeships in 13 states through 2035, in the largest U.S. judiciary expansion since 1990. The House of Representatives' hurried action fails to resolve key questions in the legislation, especially regarding how the new judgeships are allocated, according to Biden. He didn't write that. Somebody wrote it for him. Neither the House of Representatives nor the Senate explored fully how the work of senior status judges and magistrate judges affects the need for new judgeships. Go to court. Look how long it takes. That's all you need to know. We already know it. There's too much of a delay. And the law is supposed to guarantee you a speedy process and a quick trial and access to a quick trial. And you got people waiting years to get into court. Biden had already threatened to flex his veto power, warning he would make the move 2 days before the legislation cleared the GOP-led House on December 12th. There had been bipartisan support for the measure, and scores of judges appointed from both parties publicly championed the bill, noting how their caseloads have surged more than 30% in the last 3 decades. Under the proposed act, new judges would have been added in 25 federal district courts in 6 waves on a 2-year basis through 2035. The system of adding new judges on a staggered basis was intended to allay fears of one president or party reaping the benefits of the expansion, a long-standing sticking point in effect to beef up the federal judiciary. But again, all they have to do is clear this later on. They'll just pass again. Biden did not mention Trump by name in his veto, but some observers speculated that the incoming president's forthcoming return to the White House loomed large. I bet, because right now Trump is bigger than life. The Democratic-led Senate backed the measure in August, but the House did not wrangle it through until after Trump's victory on November 5th. There you go. Tuck said she was probably wearing several layers of clothing, a lot of fuel, and he knew that. Yeah, especially being in the winter, cold months. I'm sure she had multiple layers. Tuck says, there goes China Joe delaying the right to a fair and speedy trial again. All People says, surprised the number of requests new judges wasn't 666. Indeed. But he vetoed it. He did it just to be a smug bastard. He didn't want, I don't want Trump to be able to do it, even though it's staggered all the way to 2035. He'll be able to appoint or influence a handful, and the rest will be done by somebody else. What are you doing? What are you doing? Caseloads are already backed up. Again, sometimes people are sitting there a year or more waiting to get into court, or getting delayed, or getting hung up, or getting rushed through a trial. And then you don't have adequate discovery of whatever the issue is. So you get cheated. Anybody else sick of getting cheated in court? I've been cheated in court. What a bastard. How childish. How childish. But again, this is why once somebody loses their job, you try to get them out as quickly as possible. These are the things that are done. Look at how much money has been wasted, how many sloppy bills have been pushed, how many loans have been given out from the government. It's outrageous. It's absolutely outrageous. And then this is just another delay that'll cause more issues. Doing it on purpose. Not that he's making these decisions. He's only ever been a puppet pretty much the entire time he's been in office. 50 years. 50 years. Incredible. What a legacy. Tuck says even some of the chronically homeless here in South Florida wear too much clothing. I suspect because it's the easiest way to carry and protect it. Definitely an imperfect tactic. Yeah, I know what you mean, though. You often see people bundle, even in like hot months, summer months, bundled up in a way that doesn't make any damn sense. Well, while we're on the subject of corruption, we're going to jump to Walmart. Get a load of this. And this is a CNN article. Walmart illegally opened bank accounts for over 1 million drivers. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau sued Walmart and fintech company Branch Messenger for allegedly forcing more than 1 million delivery workers to use expensive deposit accounts to access their paychecks, the agency announced Monday. The companies opened deposit accounts for Walmart's drivers with their personal information, such as social security numbers, without authorization, according to the agency's complaint. Walmart's Spark drivers, who the company classes as independent contractors who bring packages from the company's warehouses to customers' doorsteps, could only have their pay deposited into the branch's accounts, the complaint says. Since 2021, Walmart told workers they could lose their jobs for not using the accounts, according to the lawsuit. That's a dirty practice. Accessing their earnings took a complex process that sometimes led to weeks-long delays, according to the lawsuit, despite assurances they would have instant access to their pay. Basically, they want to pay the drivers who go around, like if you order something from Walmart, Walmart delivers it for you. The drivers are paid with a debit card instead of it going directly to their checking account or traditional paper check. They get a debit card, which that's been a practice with a lot of companies for some time now. I remember I had clients when I worked for the Juvenile Justice Authority. We had a couple of the clients who got waitressing jobs, and I forget where they were working. I don't remember which restaurant chain they were working for, like Applebee's or something. They were paid with debit cards, company debit card. Drivers paid a combined total of $10 million in junk fees to transfer wages into other accounts, according to the CFPB. Companies cannot force workers into getting paid through accounts that drain their earnings with junk fees, the CFPB director Rohit Chopra said in a statement. The lawsuit described the typical Spark driver as a woman, has children, does not have a college degree, and is low income. I don't think I've seen a female, because I've seen the Walmart trucks out around here sometimes. I don't think I've seen a woman driving one of those, but what do I know? Walmart denied CFPB's claims and said it would defend itself in court. Sure, because they can afford to do that. The CFPB rushed lawsuit is riddled with factual errors and contains exaggerations and blatant mistreatments of settled principles of law, the company said in a statement Monday. The CFPB never allowed Walmart a fair opportunity to present its case during their rushed investigation. We look forward to vigorously defending the company before a court that, unlike the CFPB, honors the due process of law. Okay. What that basically boils down to is that Walmart can afford to drag things out in court for years. And this consumer protection agency, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, probably can't. And they'll end up with a settlement eventually. Spector says, I can understand elderly and disabled people getting food delivered, but able-bodied people doing this is weak and lazy. Well, you're right, Spector, but guess what? People are weak and lazy. You guys hear me say it all the time that people aren't that smart anyways. They're also not that strong and not that industrious. And they have no sense of urgency. And they will, like water, always choose the path of least resistance. And if that means paying extra for something they can't afford for the convenience of having it delivered, they'll do it. Why do you think there's DoorDash? I'm not picking on you, Spector. I'm making fun of the unfortunate human condition, basically. That's the unfortunate reality of the human condition. Lazy, stupid, selfish, dirty. That's most people, I'm sorry. Back to the article. The Consumer Protection Bureau, I read that part. I'm on the wrong. The thing jumped or I moved it. It says the lawsuit is the growing chorus for more protections and official classifications for gig workers who have freelance jobs through apps like Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash. Earlier this month, the CFPB under the Biden administration sued JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo for allegedly failing to prevent fraud on the money sending app Zelle. That's interesting. And these banks, by the way, JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo most recently have been in so much trouble over the years for defrauding customers. Wells Fargo defrauded customers out of what, $6 billion? $6 billion, was it? Fraudulent accounts or misuse or mishandling of money. And then they put out ads basically saying, we're the new Wells Fargo. We're sorry. We're all better now. Who remembers that? Wells Fargo doing that not too long ago. I'm not surprised to see JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo. You know when you didn't used to see banks getting into that kind of trouble before they were nationalized by Bill Clinton? When they had to be regional banks, they didn't used to get into that kind of trouble. They couldn't afford to. Look at how much trouble it's caused by allowing them to spread across the entire country like that. We saw the housing market crash. We saw people lose their 401ks. We saw interest at banks dwindle away and disappear, where once upon a time you could go to the bank and get 4, 5, 6, 7% interest on a deposit account. Now you can't get shit. It's incredible. It's incredible the amount of damage. That's Bill Clinton's legacy right there, destroying the banking industry or setting the banking industry up to ruin everybody else. And speaking of ruining everybody, I'll bring you back to the Biden administration since we were on the subject earlier. And their $1 trillion in waste. This will be a Fox News article coming up here. Drag shows, Arabic Sesame Street, and lonely rats. GOP senator details how Biden spent $1 trillion on government waste. Senator Rand Paul is calling out the Biden administration spending over $1 trillion taxpayer dollars on government waste just this year, including on a bearded lady cabaret show, Arabic Sesame Street, and, quote, girl-centered climate action. The Kentucky senator released his annual Festivus report that details different ways in which the current administration spent taxpayer dollars throughout the year. The 2024 Festivus Waste Report found that Biden-Harris administration spent over $1 trillion this year, including giving grants to Beards on Ice, an ice skating drag show on climate change, put on by the Bearded Ladies Cabaret, a self-described queer cabaret arts organization. Additionally, the Agency for International Development spent $20 million on a Sesame Street spin-off show in Iraq titled Al-Sun Simsim in an effort to promote inclusion and mutual respect. Why are we paying for Sesame Street spin-offs in Iraq? Why is your tax dollars going to that? 1.5 million was spent experimenting on how different species, such as young female kittens, respond to motion sickness. According to the report, researchers would strap kittens to a table where they're spun around in several directions and have holes drilled into their skulls to keep them in place. And it's being done with your money. That's horrible. Don't get me going. I don't like it when people screw with animals. And that cost $500,000 was donated by the Biden administration to that project. Yeah, you know what? If you spin someone around, even a kitten, they're going to get dizzy. We need to spend $500,000 and we need to torture an animal to death to do it. The Department of Health and Human Services reportedly gave New York University $400,000 to study whether lonely rats seek cocaine more than rats who are in positive environments, while the Department of the Interior allocated $12 million to fund a pickleball complex in Las Vegas. You know, I still don't even know what the hell pickleball is. I've heard that phrasing. I don't know what the hell it is. Tuck says Clintons are like radioactive waste. Their legacy has permanently poisoned humanity. And Country says so much wasted money on BS studies in other countries. We shouldn't be spending money on anything in another country. I don't care what it is, especially not freaking Sesame Street, which is already poison in our country. The Sesame Street you see now is nothing compared to the Sesame Street we grew up with. Do not let your kids watch modern Sesame Street. Cut it off right when Elmo came on the show. There's plenty of episodes, decades worth of episodes that they could watch. The State Department spent $3 million on girl-centered climate action in Brazil. Why are we spending that money in Brazil? A program reportedly designed to empower young women to become climate leaders by integrating equity and inclusivity into environmental activism in Brazil. Oh, as the average American taxpayers struggle to pay rent, their hard-earned dollars are ironically funneled into more real estate, the report read, referring to the Biden struggles spending $10 billion on maintaining and furnishing buildings that were empty. Government buildings that are empty or mostly empty, replacing all of their furniture to the tune of $10 billion. Does he have stock in a furniture company? The Department of Energy gave automakers $15.5 billion to push the industry into electric vehicle sector, while another $388,000 was given to Magic in the United States, a podcast discussing how magical beliefs and practices have evolved in the U.S. Can I get a $388,000 grant? Can I? I'll expand to 2 hours. Oh my God. The senator also mentioned the Biden administration giving $2.1 million to fund Paraguay's border. Quote, nothing says America first like securing someone else's border. And that's Paul Rand speaking. So it's okay to fund borders in other countries, but you want to tear the walls down in ours. Spectre says it's a ball in the shape of a pickle. Is it? I have no idea what the hell that is. It sounds stupid. D-Lo is here. Glad you can make it, D-Lo. This is very upsetting. $10 billion on furnishing buildings that are empty. Office buildings that belong to the government. What, you may as well have a fire sale with the existing furniture and then shut buildings up and shut them down. That's a waste of money. $15.5 billion into the electric vehicle sector, and it's more than that now. We already know it's more than that. It's much more than that. Okay? Because he's granted additional money into that sector to electric vehicle companies that are going bankrupt because no one's buying their product. And there's Nostalgic Pod Blast, the program director for fistfulofradio.com. Please do check them out if you get the chance. Yeah, never mind the pardons. He mentions the pardons there. Pardons on child killers are pure evil. It's no worse than the other pardons that he did. The guy who had inappropriate child photos, the pardons he gave to Chinese operatives that were in prison for espionage, all of the fraudsters and politicians that were in prison for stealing funds, misappropriating funds, for taking bribes. Cheeseburger says, I can tell you the results of the cat thing for free. I won't, though, because it's torture. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Anybody, any animal that you spin around is going to get dizzy. We need to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. What was it, $500,000 for a grant for that? And they killed those animals. It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. These, ugh. And I agree. This kind of waste. This is exactly why Trump set up Musk and Ramaswamy to look for this kind of stuff and shut it down. $1 trillion, $3 million for girl-centered climate action in Brazil, 2.1 million for Paraguay's border. That makes no sense. And this one makes me sick. Right? The first one, Beards on Ice, a grant to Beards on Ice, an ice skating drag show about climate change put on by the Bearded Ladies Cabaret, a queer cabaret arts organization. Unbelievable. These guys shouldn't be getting, grant is the only way people like this make any damn money. The only way any guys are going to make any damn money, because nobody will hire them. You going to hire these people? Oh my God. Oh. $400,000 to study if rats like cocaine. $12 million for a pickleball complex in Las Vegas. Like Las Vegas couldn't afford to do something like that if it made any sense. And then an Islamic Sesame Street for Iranian television. We're paying for this. Spectre says all this insanity will soon be irrelevant. I hope so. I hope this is why everybody's all upset about Elon Musk and Ramaswamy. I hope they burn this stuff down. I hope they burn programs like this to the ground. $1 trillion, $1 trillion, your tax dollars at work. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. It's offensive. It's 100% offensive. And then, of course, what's the answer to it? Oh, well, they need more money. Oh, government shutdown every time you turn around. Oh, we're about to shut down. Oh, we don't have any money. We need to raise taxes. We're going to raise taxes on the rich and make them pay their fair share. I'm so tired of hearing that too. The upper 1% of wealthy people in this country, according to the IRS, already pay 45% of what's collected in income tax. 45%. How much more can you take from them that'll make any sense? That's supposed to convince anybody. But people believe that. They want to believe that. Oh, we got to make the wealthy pay their fair share. And the least among us don't pay any taxes. The people that we're supposed to be protecting by raising taxes on other people don't pay them anyways. If you're below poverty, if you work and you're below poverty, you get every bit of your federal income back. The federal income tax, they return it all. And you probably get an EIC check anyways, which is other people's tax money because it's not technically a refund. We've talked about that before. Country says, and they deny hurricane victims a whole $750. No kidding. Meanwhile, all this goes on. Meanwhile, we're constantly bailing out bankrupt electric vehicle companies who are making electric school buses and electric snowplows that don't work and are in storage all over the country. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. Also incredible, and we're going to jump to Starbucks here. Starbucks, because just like Amazon, is trying to strike. This is a Reuters article. This is kind of funny to me. Starbucks strike to expand to over 300 U.S. stores on Christmas Eve, according to the union. So a strike at Starbucks U.S. stores will expand to over 300 stores on Tuesday, with more than 5,000 workers expected to walk off the job before the 5-day work stoppage ends later on Christmas Eve, the workers' union said. Starbucks Workers United, representing employees at 525 stores nationwide, said more than 60 U.S. stores across 12 major cities, including New York, Los Angeles, Boston, and Seattle, were shut on Monday. Talks between Starbucks and the union had hit an impasse with unresolved issues over wages, staffing, and schedules, leading to the strike. Well, your schedules are going to be a mess if you're on strike. And as far as wages, Starbucks knows that just like with any restaurant or any food service, these people are collecting a lot of tips, a lot of gratuities. The Christmas Eve strike on Tuesday was projected to be the largest ever at the coffee chain. Starbucks did not immediately respond to a Reuters request for comment. These strikes are an initial show of strength, and we're just getting started, an Oregon barista said in a union statement. The Seattle headquartered firm has previously said it was ready to continue negotiations, claiming the union delegates prematurely ended the bargaining session. Earlier this month, the workers' group rejected an offer of no immediate wage hike and a guarantee of a 1.5% pay increase in the future years. The union also said Starbucks had yet to present its workers with a serious economic proposal. Well, they're technically wait staff. I don't know what they actually are, but I know that they collect a lot of tips. Okay? But what's funny to me about this is that the union, there is a union, represents 525 stores. Okay? 525 stores, and that as many as 300 of those stores, they call it a store, they mean the Starbucks restaurant, okay, or a coffee house, that as many as 300 of them will go on strike as of Tuesday. Okay? Do you know how many Starbucks there are? I'll tell you. There are almost 33,000 Starbucks. Did you know that? And half of them are in the United States. So more than 15,000 Starbucks in the United States. And Starbucks is supposed to quake in their boots because you've got a scheduled slowdown at 300 locations that are mostly located in states that require a union, like New York. It's almost funny to me. It's really funny. Monkey says to get paid back how much shit in the last 4 years the Biden-Harris administration have spent. No wonder Trump wants to use tariffs now. Yeah, well, I mean, he was jumping that off when he was in office the first time, and it was working because things weren't that bad. It was working. And Country says, I'm so glad we have the smart people in office now, I guess. Country doesn't like Starbucks. He says they suck anyways. You know what's good, actually? It's not the Starbucks franchises that are in the Barnes and Nobles. Because I used to go to Starbucks in Barnes and Noble. Although I haven't been there in many years, I used to go to the one in Barnes and Nobles, and I found them to be much better than a traditional Starbucks, most likely because nobody's there. You go to a regular Starbucks and they're packed. If you go to the ones in the Barnes and Noble stores, there's never anybody there. It's quiet. So they can take their time and do it right. Does that make sense? Tuck says there's probably 200 Starbucks in my county. I can't be sure. I never use them, but they're in most hospitals in every downtown and probably every mall. Yeah, they're all over the place. There are, I'm pretty sure about those numbers. I'll look it up really quick for confirmation. Just Starbucks are there in total. I'll pull this up for you so that I can confirm. But like I said, you're telling me that you got as many as 300 of them are doing basically a slowdown or a temporary walkout. Why the hell should Starbucks give a shit? When there are, here it comes, currently 32,660 locations. 32,660 locations. That's globally. But if you want to know how many are in the US, 15,270. 15,270. So you have a strike in as many stores as represents less than 1% of the total locations owned by Starbucks. And this isn't even counting like probably franchised locations. Oh my God. And Cheese says, my view is pretty small and finite, but I think with free trade, we won't need anything other than wheelbarrows to haul our money in. I hope so. I hope so. We'll see what happens. Tuck says, my wife got a Starbucks card a couple of years ago. We re-gifted it to my niece. Yeah, like I said, I used to go because it was Barnes & Noble, and I used to take my youngest to the bookstore all the time. And we go and we hang out in Barnes & Noble, maybe pick up a book, and we'd go and we'd get I'd get like the big chocolate chip cookie for him at the Starbucks, and we'd sit there. It was nice. You know, it was a nice little thing to do. But I always found it to be better than a traditional one. If I went to a traditional Starbucks, I wouldn't like it. And again, I haven't been to one in years and years and years. But yeah, this is hardly going to be scaring Starbucks into doing anything. What the hell do they care? What the hell do they care? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And in case you were worried about it, I'm sure you weren't. I'm sure you weren't. But in case you were, I got an Associated Press article coming up here talking about Alec Baldwin. Prosecutors withdraw their appeal of dismissed case against Alec Baldwin in fatal movie set shooting. That's right. He is 100% off the hook. It's all over. The appeal, they threw it out. New Mexico prosecutors won't pursue an appeal of a court's decision to dismiss an involuntary manslaughter charge against Alec Baldwin in the fatal shooting of a cinematographer on the set of a Western movie. The Santa Fe District Attorney's Office announced Monday. Special Prosecutor Kari Morrissey withdrew the appeal of a July decision at trial to dismiss the charge against Baldwin in the death of the cinematographer Halnya Hutchins during a rehearsal on the set of the movie Rust. Today's decision to dismiss the appeal is the final vindication of what Alec Baldwin and his attorney have said from the beginning, that this was an unspeakable tragedy, but Alec Baldwin committed no crime, said defense attorney Luke Nikas and Alex Spiro. The rule of law remains intact in New Mexico. Does it? The decision to drop the appeal solidifies the decision by Judge Mary Marlowe Sommers halfway through the trial to dismiss the case on allegations that police and prosecutors withheld evidence from the defense. Baldwin's trial was upended by revelations that ammunition was brought into the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office in March by a man who said it could be related to Hutchins' killing. Prosecutors said they deemed the ammo unrelated and unimportant, while Baldwin's lawyer said investigators buried the evidence in a separate case file and filed a successful motion to dismiss. Actually, if that had gone to light, it would have worked against him. It is involuntary manslaughter. It is involuntary manslaughter, because he was not following protocol for an actor using a firearm. Because on these sets, and we talked about this at length, and I read the regulations some months ago from Hollywood on the use of firearms on set, and he violated those regulations. The guns are real. They use blanks. Firstly, real ammo was brought onto the set because Alec and some of his buddy boys were using the guns for target practice, screwing around. Okay, which is a violation. No live ammo should have been there. They did that. He did that. Secondly, you never actually point the firearm at anyone. When you see someone pointing a gun at someone in Hollywood on a movie or a TV show, you're actually pointing it off center, either to the left or the right. You can't tell from the camera angle, but it's never actually pointed at an individual. They've got a soft target to the left or the right to avoid that kind of a problem. Something that goes all the way back to the silent movie era because of accidents, that's been avoided primarily all this time, with a few rare exceptions like Brandon Lee. And that was just a fragment that was inside of a gun. It wasn't even a bullet. That's why that's done. You never actually point it at anyone, especially when you're not rolling. When they practice without rolling, the firearm isn't used. You point with your hands or with another implement. He violated all of those rules. So it is involuntary manslaughter. And he's going to walk away with it. Meanwhile, the armorer is sitting in jail. All People says, did Baldwin and his wife get the reality show they've been plotting for months? I have no idea. And Cheese says, camera magic. Basically, it's an illusion. You're not actually pointing it at anyone. It's an illusion. Inspector says he's glad he lives in a country that he doesn't have to deal with 95% of the insanity. Is it on Mars? I know, well, the bigger the country, the more weirdness is going to be. And also the wealthier the country, the more weirdness there's going to be. Every country's got its problems. But yeah, he's 100% off scot-free there. He gets a total walk, which then begs the argument, what about the armorer? Because she really wasn't responsible. A real live bullet may have slipped past her, but Baldwin is the one who, while the cameras were not rolling, decided to draw and point a weapon at people. A cinematographer, someone who's not even one of the other actors, has nothing to do with what's going on in the portrayal, and pull the trigger and dick around, playing games like a little 5-year-old kid with a toy. Completely irresponsible. Huge anti-gun advocate. Accidentally kills someone with a gun because he's being irresponsible with it. And he gets a walk. Cakewalk. Cakewalk Baldwin. It's despicable. But you know how it is. Money talks and bullshit walks. Incredible. Oh, I see. Vector says, I live in the country. I work in the country. I don't go to cities, just a very small town. Okay. You mean you live in the country, not a country specific. I live in the country. I read it wrong. That's what it is. It sounded like you meant you live somewhere else, like you're on Easter Island or something. But yeah, I totally get what you're saying. That's why we're not as rural as we'd like to be, but we're semi-rural where we are. And the more rural you can live, the less opportunity there is for people to screw with you, and the smaller the government is. So yeah, I totally get what you're saying there. I misread that. Spectre. And one for the holidays, and this is a Telegraph article. Woke carols are the latest sign of a church that's lost faith in its convictions. If you're planning to attend a carol service tomorrow night, you might want to check out the hymn sheet first. Make sure you don't end up bellowing out, "Oh, come all ye wokeful." You see, priests have been told to edit popular carols this Christmas in order to avoid causing unnecessary offenses. Quite why you would be in church to begin with if you found Christianity so offensive has not been made clear. Obviously, this is an opinion piece, but it makes sense. Do you see many vegans and butchers demanding to talk to the managers? Last time you were down the pub, did you notice any teetotalers? Teetotalers? I'm not sure what that is. Raging at the landlords about his disgusting wall of booze. Yet, according to a whistleblower vicar, Church of England clergy across the country have been contacted, and urged to alter various Advent hymns to avoid upset. Those singled out as particularly concerning are O Come, Emmanuel, for depicting other faiths as being outside of God's grace, and Lo, He comes with clouds descending. The clergy has been sent a link to research suggesting the second verse contains problematic words by stating Jesus is the true Messiah. In a further email sent by the Birmingham Diocese, clergy were advised to, quote, try to use language that won't add further confusion or tension or take away anything from the good news of the Nativity, and they wonder why the pews are empty. They wonder why. Tuck says teetotalers, those who do not imbibe. Okay. I see. I read it wrong. I'm not familiar with the phrasing. The teetotalers. Eric says, I didn't pull the trigger. He should get time for simply lying. I agree. Spectre says you need a vacation. I can't afford one. I always wonder about that. You see all these ads constantly for vacations. When it's not an ad for medication or insurance, they want, oh, come to Ohio. Oh, come to Hawaii. Who the hell can afford all these vacations? Who can afford all these cruises and airline flights and hotel stays? I sure as hell can't. Country says teetotalers is someone that never drinks. So I'm a teetotaler. All people says Galatians 1:8, but though that we or an angel from heaven preach unto you otherwise than that which we have preached unto you, let him be accursed. Absolutely. That's right. Many will come. But yeah, this is just the next in a long line of knuckling under from so-called faith, from Christian and Catholic churches, knuckling under in an attempt to pretend to not be offensive, to fill the pews. But we actually talked about this a little bit yesterday. The more that you pander, the more you conform to the rest of the world. And then when you bring people in you're not going to save them or convince them of anything because you're continuing to pander to them. They're changing you. The so-called sinners, as it were, are converting the church instead of the other way around. I don't have to repent. I don't have to change. I don't have to stop my evil ways or my sins. I can go to church and force you to accept me anyways. I've changed you. You haven't changed me. That's the problem with the modern church. Country says, as a Catholic, I find this ridiculous. There you go. Spectre says, drive out to the countryside, pick a spot, set up camp, do some fishing, and get away from everything and relax. Yeah, no kidding. But anyways, with that, I got to go ahead and wrap things up. I'm at the top of the hour. Remember, I'm not going to be on tomorrow. So, again, you are listening to and or watching Coffee Talk, and you can find the live portion Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube on Coffee Talk and Prepper University. You can find me on X at Coffee Talk Chat. You can find me on fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta. Thank you, everybody who was able to join us here today. As always, hope you got something out of the conversation. And we will see you again